Good evening, everyone. Tonight we will be discussing the intangibles of the recruiting process. So, really diving into what college coaches are looking for beyond your level of athletic play. So, I'm super excited to be here talking about this with you tonight. So before we jump into everything, I just want to formally introduce myself. My name is Kayla Schaal, and I am a customer success specialist here at SportsRecruits. So if you've had any difficulties with your profile, you've probably received an email from me. But I did play college soccer at Mount Aloysius College. I graduated back in 2023. So I'm super excited to kind of be walking you through some of these intangibles of the recruiting process since they are a huge part of the recruiting process and something that I feel as though is just as important as your athletic abilities. So, what we're going to go through tonight, just a brief agenda. We're going to be talking about when our college coaches evaluating you. So, when that's on the field, off the field, those types of things. We're going to talk about what you should be doing and how you should be carrying yourself on the field as a student athlete. We're going to be talking about sideline and post-game presence and what some things to consider in that area are. And then we'll go over meeting with a college coach, things to say, things to think about, and then the different types of meetings that you may encounter or interactions you may encounter with a college coach over the course of your recruiting process. And then at the end, we will have some time for a Q&A. So at any time throughout the webinar, if you have a question, you can drop it right in the chat and we'll be sure to get to that at the end. Or if you want to wait to the end too, by all means, you can do that as well. And just so you guys are aware, this webinar is being recorded. So if you want to go back and rewatch it, or if you want to share it with a friend, it will be available on YouTube after 24 hours, and you'll also be sent a copy of the recording so you have that. I always like to just, announce that to everyone, just so you know if in case you miss something or find something super valuable that you want to check back to at a later date. So let's get into it then. So, first section, we're going to be talking about when are college coaches actually evaluating me. So, the short answer to this question is always. You're always getting evaluated by college coaches. There is no on or off switch in the recruiting process. A coach is always recruiting. And that meaning that they're always looking at you carrying yourself off the field, how you're carrying yourself on the field, so on and so forth. This is because it's a very big decision for you, and it is. It's also a very big decision for these college coaches as well, right? They're not only trying to bring in great athletes and assets to their team in that branch of it, but they're also trying to bring in great human beings who are going to fit their culture, right? Add to their team dynamic and have the same outlook and motivation as their current team. Because that is a huge part of collegiate athletics as someone who was a part of a team that we were very, very culture driven, you had to fit in. You know what I mean? You have to be able to match the energy of the team and the culture and the expectations. And they want to make sure that they're bringing in athletes that will do just that for them and their program. And something to think about too with the intangibles is a lot of times college coaches will use these as quote unquote a tiebreaker, right? So if we have two athletes, athlete A, athlete B, they're both very similar athletically and academically, and it's kind of coming down to, you know, the last few things for a college coach to evaluate. They're going to look at the intangibles. If athlete A has crappy body language, doesn't really have a good outlook, those types of things, but athlete B is super energetic, you know, is always motivating their teammates and has great body language. The college coach is 9 times out of 10 going to go with athlete B because they know that their intangibles, quote unquote, in this process have outweighed everything that athlete A has done, if that makes sense. So that's really something to consider just as you're moving through this recruiting process because college coaches are always, always evaluating those things. And it really could come down to that at the end of the day. Additionally, too, I think you always want to consider if a college coach reaches out to your club or high school staff, right? Like what is your college or what are your coaches or high school coaches going to say about you if they ask, right? You want them to say positive things about you, right? Like you're a leader on the field, you have good body language, you have a positive attitude, always motivating your teammates, showing up on time. You don't want them to have negative things to say about you from a college coach because that college coach is going to take that very seriously, especially if it's a recommendation from one of your coaches that you're working with on the day-to-day already. So, parent and guardian involvement is also a huge part of the intangibles in the recruiting process. And we always like to call this out at Sports Recruits because we are firm believers in letting the student athlete kind of drive their recruiting process. We want student athletes to drive those conversations with college coaches and be the first one interacting with college coaches, right? So if you're in a Zoom meeting or you're meeting with a college coach after a tournament or an event, you want to make sure that your student athlete is going up to them first, shaking their hand first, because college coaches are looking for individuals who can carry on these conversations with themselves, showing that level of maturity that they're ready to be able to take at the next level, right? They want people who are individuals and can, talk for themselves when they're joining this new program. So that's just something to always be mindful of as parent and guardians when, you're seeing your student athletes interact with these coaches. It's also super important that you as parents and guardians are super mindful of what you're saying on the sidelines. This could be to other parents, your significant others, whoever it may be. Video can pick up audio on the sidelines. And you never know if a college coach is watching live, if they're sitting right next to you, or a friend of a friend is sitting right next to you, or if they watch back the video and they hear you talking about it. So always be mindful of what you're saying, how you're saying it. You always just want to be super supportive and of not only your student athlete, but of their team, because college coaches do take those things into consideration. Additionally, too, and this is one of the biggest things that college coaches are always looking at from a parent's perspective, right, is how you as parents or guardians are reacting to different things happening in the game. Um, and we always obviously are recommending that you remain calm during the game and staying composed no matter what the score or how bad the refs may be or what the calls are being made, because college coaches do take that into consideration. And listen, like I grew up playing sports. Again, I went through a college program for 4 years. I understand that there's a level of passion and a level of excitement that comes with playing sports. Totally get that. But there also is an aspect where you do need to remain calm and, not getting very, very upset at the referees if they make a bad call because, you know, for example, if a parent gets really upset at a bad call, that could be a detriment to your student athlete's recruiting process because that college coach may be like, oh, I don't really want to bring that culture or that energy to my current team and put them in that situation. So it's just always something to be mindful of and to consider when you're at events this summer or you're at camps or clinics, whatever that may be. So now we're going to talk about on-field presence and things to consider when you're actually playing in a game. So things to definitely consider and think about. So I was always told growing up, how you practice is how you play. And if you warm up slow, you're going to come out slow. So you always want to think about that when you're warming up. College coaches are looking for student athletes that are going to carry themselves at a high level from the minute they step on the field during warm-ups until the minute they're back in the locker room after a game, from start to finish. And that includes warm-ups. They want to make sure that their recruits and their current athletes are taking warm-ups very seriously, right? They're stretching fully. If you're required to do sprints for warming up, are you getting to the line, not shortcutting it? Because if you're shortcutting it in warm-ups, what are you going to do in a game? They look for those things and they do matter. This is a big one, but a lot of our team, again, we talk with college coaches regularly. College coaches have told us that a huge red flag to them at tournaments and events is if student athletes are not carrying their own equipment. So, for example, if I'm rolling up to a tournament and my dad or my mom's behind me and they're carrying all of my equipment and I'm going over to the field, like that's a very big red flag for college coaches. And that's something that we always recommend. You want to be handling your own equipment because, again, it goes back to what I said earlier. It's showing college coaches that you're capable of and in control of everything that you do and you're responsible for, and that's showing a level of maturity for them, right? Because they're not going to carry your equipment when you're getting on a bus to go travel to a conference game away. Another huge part and something to really, really think about is how you're interacting with your teammates, coaches and the refs and officials. So when you're thinking about interactions with your teammates, are they positive on the field, right? Your teammates are your equals and they're your friends, especially like if you're on a team that has a great culture, those are the people that you're spending a lot of time with on and off the field. So you want to be talking to them with respect, and you want to make sure that on the field, if, something goes wrong, you're working through it, you're not yelling at each other because college coaches are always looking at that. Additionally, how you're interacting with your coaches. So, if your coaches are relaying you feedback or things to look out for on the field, how are you responding to them? Are you implementing those things that they're recommending? Are you talking back to them? All things to keep in mind when you're actually playing on the field. And last but not least, as we kind of talked about with the parents, how you interact with referees and officials. So, listen, again, played sports my whole life. I know that there's bad refs out there, and I have been on the back end of extremely bad calls, especially at the collegiate level. But it's how you react and it's how you bounce back from those calls. So, for example, if, you have a bad call against you and it turns into the other team having an opportunity to generate, you know, in soccer, like a penalty kick or like a scoring opportunity, you know, how is your body language reacting to that? Are you going to let that affect the rest of your play? Are you going to kind of let your body language go poor? Are you going to get really mad at the official and talk back to them? No, college coaches don't want to see that. They want to see that you can bounce back quickly and that you can kind of continue on your game with ease and composure. Again, going back to that maturity. So all things to be considered, those interactions are crucial and something that college coaches are looking for all the time, especially with event season rolling up. They're also looking at your sports IQ and your IQ of the game, whatever game you're playing. So a huge thing that my college coach always emphasized was, what are you doing when you're not on the ball, right? What are you doing when you're removed from the play? Are you just standing there, kind of dilly-dallying, waiting for the ball to come to you? Or are you doing something active? Are you making a run so you're pulling a defender away from you to open up an opportunity for someone else to go? Are you cheering on your teammates to like win the ball back? Are you actively engaged in the play? Because that's what college coaches want. They want someone who's going to be actively engaged from the minute they step on the field to the minute they're subbed on or off. So that's always something to keep in mind. Also, too, especially in showcase style events and tournaments, and there's a lot of college coaches watching, right? Like, obviously, you want to showcase your skills, you want to showcase your abilities, but learning when it's a good time to do that and right and like kind of take the ball and maybe do a 1v1 or those types of things, and when's a good time to make the smart play, right? So a lot of the times student athletes will get caught up and trying to just show off and like do all of the things when sometimes college coaches are looking for the IQ for them to know, like, okay, this is an opportunity for me to go score and do this on my own, or this is an opportunity for me to give a really great assist or open up an opportunity for one of my teammates to go make a great play. And they just want to see that. They want to see that you have that balance when you're on the field. And then obviously, when you're going to showcase style events, if you go to showcase style events, get to know your teammates. You want to make sure that you're putting yourself out there and being a leader on the field because that's what college coaches want. That's what they're going to expect from you when you join a program, to learn and get to know your teammates and kind of put yourself out there. So it's a good challenge and a great way to do that early on if you're kind of doing these showcase style events. And last but not least, the most important thing as a former collegiate athlete and someone who kind of helped with some of the recruiting process in my later years is body language, like body language, body language. I cannot emphasize that enough. If you have poor body language on the field or you just don't look like you want to be there, that's going to be an automatic red flag for college coaches or recruiting staff, whoever that may be, because if you don't love your sport, and your body language doesn't show that, then why would they want to recruit you and have you be a part of their program, right? They want someone who's going to be energetic, showing positive body language, positive attitude towards their coaches, peers, and just the game itself, because that's the energy that they want to bring to their program. And they want people to embody that for their program. So now kind of moving into the sideline and post-game presence. we kind of touched on this a little bit, but just your reactions in general. So what happens if you are subbed out, right? There's times where you're going to get subbed out, someone else needs to go in, vice versa. How are you reacting? Are you getting mad? Are you throwing your water bottle when you go over to the bench, right? Like, or are you coming off, high-fiving your teammate that's going on, giving them a pat on the back? And are you like cheering them on? Are you, helping your teammates on the sideline, like showing that constant attentiveness too, as soon as you're subbed out, right? Because college coaches want student athletes to be engaged, whether they're on and off the field. So having a student athlete that's constantly motivating their teammates from the sideline or helping them when they're on the sideline, when maybe the coach is caught up in something, they want people who are locked in to the game from start to finish. And showing that on the sideline is just as important as if you're on the field. And also, again, just being positive, having that motivation goes back to body language as well. Are you standing up? Are you clapping for your teammates if something good happens, right? Are you making sure that you're, watching the game and just being a positive influence to all of your other teammates, right? Like you don't want to have that poor body language or that negative attitude on the sideline because college coaches will take note of that. And it's something, to be honest, right, as freshmen coming into a program, you might have to sit on the bench for a little bit and understand that that's your place, right? So understanding and being happy with and content your place and understand that you can make a positive impact no matter where you are on this team. And college coaches truly, truly do value that because your time will come eventually and you would want someone to do that for you, you know? And then obviously your post-game presence. How are you presenting yourself after a huge win or a huge loss? This is crucial. So when your, teams line up at the end of the game, are you shaking hands with people? Are you, walking past them and like being grumpy and all things like that, right? You want to show good sportsmanship. Good sportsmanship is something that is huge at the collegiate level, especially since, you're playing people in the same conference for the next 4 years. You don't want to be known as someone who's a bad sport to not only other colleges, but for your college and for other officials too. So you always want to make sure that if there's an opportunity to shake hands, you're saying good game and kind of leaving it at that. Obviously, too, they're always looking if you're cleaning up your area, right? Are you leaving trash? Are you picking up your belongings? Because, when you go to away games at college, like you're responsible for those things. So they want to make sure that they're recruiting people who are responsible for cleaning up after themselves and take ownership of kind of the space that they're containing when they're at an event or at a game. We talked about this earlier, but carrying your own equipment and being responsible for your own belongings, and then always asking for feedback after a camp, clinic, or showcase. And this doesn't mean bombarding a college coach right after a game and running up to them and saying, "Hey, coach, how did I do?" Like, no, you want to give it a couple days after a showcase or a clinic and then just follow up with them. Be like, "Hey, coach, thanks for coming out to watch me play. Really appreciated it. I would love to hear your feedback on my performance or XYZ." Right? That's great because that shows that you are still interested in them and that you want to continue that communication and you're, also showing them appreciation of them taking time out of their day to come watch you, which is something that college coaches will always keep in the back of their mind. So now we'll move into meeting with a college coach and what that looks like and the different things to consider and the different types of meetings that you might have with a college coach. So in-person meetings, there's, as you near the end of your recruiting process, an in-person meeting or multiple in-person meetings may happen. And in my opinion, this is a time for college coaches to truly get to know you more as an individual and as a human being rather than the student athlete or the athlete that they're recruiting for their program. They want to get to know you as a person. Kind of like we mentioned earlier, they're bringing in people who they want to reflect their culture and their program. They want good people, right? So take this opportunity as a way for them to get to know you as a person and as an individual. And that always goes back to recognizing first and playing the appropriate role. Like I mentioned earlier as well, we at SportsRecruits recommend that student athletes are driving their recruiting process. They are the ones and in-person meetings sitting in front of the coach. Parents and guardians, if you have the opportunity to sit on these meetings, sit towards the back or make sure your student athlete is driving the conversation. They're asking the questions and they're responding, right? Obviously, there might be times where a coach may ask you as a parent or guardian your input or something of that sort, and that's okay. But we just want to make sure that the student athlete is kind of the prime driver in these meetings and these conversations. Also, how you present yourself. So the first thing you want to do is obviously enter with a good handshake. That's a really good, strong first impression. Obviously, throughout the meeting, you want to make sure you maintain good posture and eye contact, right? Because that's just showing that you're engaged and that you want to be there. And that's crucial for college coaches, right? You want to make sure that they're taking time out of your day to meet with you, and you want to make sure that you're respecting their time and showing them that you're actively engaged in that conversation. And confidence, just being confident when you walk into a room, know that you're there for a reason, right? This coach asked you to be in their office or meet with them for a reason, and you deserve to be there. Have confidence in your answers, have confidence in yourself, and just be you, right? At the end of the day, that's all I recommend, because as soon as you start, veering off and trying to give these responses that aren't authentic and genuine to who you are as a person, that's as soon as college coaches will kind of toss up the red flag and understand, like, oh, they're just kind of saying what I want them to say or being this person that I want them to be, not just being their true authentic self. So have confidence and just truly be engaged in the conversation throughout from start to finish. And this next bullet point, I think personally, is if you can take anything away from these slides, it's this, because being the interviewer and not the interviewee, right? So although that this is a big decision for the college coach and they're asking you to come to their program, you're also making a 4-5 year long commitment to join this program. So you need to ask questions that are going to help you make the best decision for you and in your process, right? So you want to ask the harder questions, not the ones that you can do a quick Google search on, right? You don't want to ask the college like, "Hey, what was your record this year?" You could find that out just by doing a quick Google search. You want to ask things like, how's your team culture? What does that look like? What does the off season look like? Like, what are my responsibilities here? So you, as a student athlete, can get a better understanding of the entirety of the team culture, because that is a huge, huge, huge component of making a decision to go to a 4-year school, right? You want to make sure you're asking questions that are going to lead you to the right decision. And sometimes they are difficult questions, and you'll learn a lot by asking those questions. And the more of these meetings you do, the more questions you'll be familiar with and, get more comfortable asking. And then obviously you want to establish next steps. So asking a coach, okay, this is great. Thank you so much for your time, acknowledging their time. What do you need from me moving forward? Sometimes coaches will be like, hey, just share your next event schedule with me, send it out to me so I can make sure I'm there, or I make time to be there. They might ask, can you share your recent highlight reel with me? Keep me updated with video. Keep me updated with this certain skill that you've been working on. So just always establish that next step so you can continue that line of conversation. And also just it shows them that you are also expressing further interest in their program, because, right, you want to keep that form of communication open. That means, you're going to keep talking to them. And that also shows that you're taking initiative and showing interest in their program as well. So other types of meetings and different communication that you may encounter throughout your recruiting process is on the phone, right? Especially for those out there who may be looking to go across the country and you can't really meet in person, or the coach is just maybe farther away. A lot of the times you could have a phone call with them. And you just want to make sure that when you have these phone meetings, that you're limiting distractions, you're finding a quiet room, whether that's your room, an office space. You just want to make sure it's a quiet background to show the coach that you're totally invested in the conversation. You also, again, like I mentioned earlier, you want to show your personality. You want to answer things confidently and answer things how you would answer. And also always let the coach know if, a parent or guardian is in the room with you. That's totally okay if they are. I would just always recommend you call that out just in case they're not caught off guard, or, if you take a longer pause, you feel like your parents, like the coach might feel like your parents are like feeding you information. So I would just be like, hey, coach, just you're aware, like, thanks for taking the time to call with me today. Just so you aware, my mom, or my dad sitting in the room with me, because they just want to hear the conversation. Just always call that out. I think that's just out of a respect for them, just so they're aware. And then also always have any relevant information directly in front of you. So this could be your current transcripts, your academic schedule, any upcoming events. So in the case that a coach is like, hey, like what's your schedule look like for school this year? Like what classes are you taking? What is your current like event schedule look like for this summer? You have that information ready. It shows that you're prepared. It shows that you want to, have these conversations with them. And then that'll also allow them to be like, okay, great. Thanks for sharing that events with me. I'm going to make sure that I come see you play at XYZ this summer. Right. So making sure you have those things prepared before you hop on the phone with them is something that we definitely recommend doing. Same, all that applies for video calls, but similar to like what I'm doing with you guys right now, making sure that if it is a Zoom call, you are front and center. And if you have family or members or coaches on the call, like they're kind of behind you, but again, making sure the student athlete is in the center and is the one that's driving the conversation. Always dress appropriately. I'm not saying you have to dress up like you're going to a formal or a prom, right? But making sure you're wearing like nicer clothes to show that, you took some time and thought into getting ready for this meeting. And I know sometimes we have very busy schedules. So if you're coming on and meeting with a coach right after practice and you have your practice jersey on or you have a hoodie on, I would just call that out. Just be like, hey, coach, so sorry, coming right from practice. But I'm super excited to like be meeting with you today. And they'll understand. But again, it's just kind of taking that extra step and addressing it. And that separates a lot of recruits from other athletes as well. And again, same applies. Having confident and strong body language when you're on the phone as well. Doesn't matter if you're on a Zoom call, coaches can still see if you're slouching or if you're, putting your hand down or you're scrolling on your phone. You want to make sure that you're constantly engaged in the conversation and you project that confidence and that body language through the video camera as well. And a lot of times coaches will also reach out to you via text. I believe this is like a very like common method of, recruiting nowadays. So always recommend just responding back in a timely manner. You know, college coaches do have a crazy busy schedule. So I would just avoid late night responses, right? They might be waking up early for an early morning practice. You don't want to be texting them at 11 o'clock at night. That's really not appropriate. So we always recommend like responding between 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., just kind of in that window. And always proofread before you send a message. I can't stress this enough. Like, please just make sure you're reading over your text messages. And also just like be mindful if you were texting a coach and then you go to text your friends, like just be mindful of the people you're sending messages to, especially throughout the recruiting process, because you don't want a bad text message that you meant to send to your friends or a funny text message you meant to send to your friends to get to a coach. So just always be mindful of that and always proofread to make sure everything grammatically correct and everything is coming across the way that you would want it to come across in a text message. And how to prepare for these different types of meetings. So, we talked about coming prepared with questions. And you can, for inspiration, like you can ask people that have been through the recruiting process. You can ask your club coaches, your parents for kind of like maybe a starting point on some of the questions you would want to ask. Um, and I would always just recommend doing your research on the program, what maybe their record was like, what their, like what their dynamic is, just based on like a quick Google search. Just always have that research in your back pocket because you want to kind of be prepared and have a little bit of knowledge about the program that you're looking into, obviously. And then always too, when you're considering questions, I mentioned this earlier, but not asking the simple questions, not asking questions that you can just get directly from Google. You want someone who is affiliated and internal to that program to be able to answer that question. So obviously, like someone on the outside is not going to have a question about culture or like off-season responsibilities, those types of things. So just things to keep in mind when you're going into these meetings, and that applies for just in-person interviews, phone interviews. Make sure you have these questions prepared for it all. Practicing, I totally recommend this as someone who went through a lot of interviews. The more you practice, the better you get. It's really great to do a mock interview with a parent, a friend, or even a coach, or ideally someone who's been through the recruiting process recently that has more of a pulse on it. So if you have older siblings or older friends that maybe have gone through the recruiting process, sometimes those could be a great point of reference too. But just go through a mock interview, like practice asking your questions, practice answering their questions. And that could really help you feel a lot more confident going into an interview as well. We touched on this multiple times, but always establishing next steps. What do you need from me? What do you need from me moving forward? Making sure you keep that line of communication open. Again, that is expressing additional interest from your end, but it's also showcasing the coach that you truly want to are invested in learning more about their program and want to keep, that line of communication just direct and open. And always be polite, right? Like college coaches have a crazy, crazy schedule. They wear a lot of different hats. They're balancing a lot of different things and managing a lot of different things at one time. So always thank the coach for their time, information, because that does go a long way, right? Like there might be times where a coach is coming right from practice to get on a call with you, to get on a call with another recruit. So even them taking out 30 minutes to talk with you or send you a text back or even meet with you via Zoom, just always thank them for taking the time out of their day to meet with you and always just show appreciation for that. So we are at the end. Before we get into the Q&A, if you have any additional questions, please drop them in the chat. We have a couple minutes here. We can answer them. I'm going to share a link with you all in the chat. It is for one of our recruiting analysts calendar links. So if you're interested in getting more hands-on support in the recruiting process, you can book a 15-minute call with one of our recruiting analysts, and they'll kind of go over some of the different packages that we have available and will offer you. So let me just drop that in here for you guys. Before we answer some questions. And something that our recruiting analysts do offer, which I think is super unique, in addition to those hands-on conversations and like additional support, they also will offer you like mock interviews, things of that sort, practice questions. So definitely something to think about. And if you have more questions, you can just book and learn about those different packages with one of our recruiting analysts. Okay, we have a couple questions in here. So one of them is it okay to be undecided about major when being recruited summer of junior year, or best to have a general idea of major? I think it's okay, right? Like as someone who is 24, I personally like thought I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my career at 18. But that's not always the case. Like it is okay to not know what you want to do at 18 years old, and going into the recruiting process. So I think it's just being transparent and letting them know, like, hey, I am undecided. I want to explore different opportunities. I think is great. I think you just need to be honest with them, and honest with yourself and just go in with an open mind and making sure you're looking at schools that could fit those needs and give you the opportunities to explore what majors could be best for you. Um, guys, a couple are coming in here. So what is the best way to approach a coach at a showcase and get the conversation started? So I would always recommend making sure that like you're approaching them at like a reasonable time. If they're in the middle of watching a game, I would highly recommend not going up to them and starting a conversation, right? Because they're obviously actively watching, maybe potential recruits are watching someone else, and you wouldn't want someone to pull them away from them evaluating you, right? So if you see them walking by or you walking by the coach's net or the coach's tent, and you see they're kind of by themselves, or maybe another recruit just was talking to them, I would go up and, obviously introduce yourself with a handshake, say, hey, I'm so and so. I play for this club. I saw you were briefly over here. I know we've been in contact, but I just wanted to personally introduce myself and maybe give you my schedule for the rest of the day. You could go something along those lines. We also have a bunch of suggestions and like resources on our resource center, so you could always check those out as well, especially with event season rolling up. So when you say dress nice for an interview, what is nice? Like for a guy, do you think a polo shirt and a tie? Yeah, I think a polo shirt's great. Like a little collared shirt, I think that's great. I think as long as you're not just wearing a normal t-shirt, right, or like a cutoff or like a tank top, I think as long as you have something nicer-ish on, whether that's a polo shirt or a little button down, like I think that that's more than fine. Our first meeting, our first coach meeting video, and my mom and dad will be with me. That's great. That's great news. So, yeah, my advice to you is just like be confident and just make sure that you're kind of leading the conversation. Obviously, it's great that your mom and dad will be there. My parents sat in on my first interview as well, but just make sure that, again, you're the one that's initiating the conversation, asking the questions, and that you're taking kind of initiative of that entire conversation. All right, we have time for one more. How does social media affect recruiting? So this is a huge one. We actually have another webinar that we posted a few months ago, I think, about this topic. But obviously, social media is a huge, huge part of the recruiting process. You never know who's watching. So I always recommend just making sure that you're putting out positive things on social media and making sure you're truly diligent about that because college coaches do have access to those things. They have tools that can monitor your social media, see what you're posting, see what you're doing. So just always kind of be mindful of that and just making sure that you have a positive presence on social media for sure. All right, guys. Well, that is all the questions I had come in tonight. Thank you guys again for joining. Again, this webinar is being recorded and will be distributed to you guys, but if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out. You can always reach out to our team too, help@sportsrecruits.com. We'll definitely be able to answer your questions. But yeah, it was great talking with you all tonight and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye, guys.